It would probably help. Good morning, everybody. It would probably help if I had unmuted myself. I just gave this whole spiel, and I was muted. So, first, I'd want to thank everybody for being here today, and being so flexible with with last week's change. There was some pretty intense wind, and it took down some trees, and we lost power. So, thank you so much for being flexible and joining us this week. If you know anybody in your office that was unable to make the meeting this morning, a recording will be, emailed out to them, and this will be placed up on YouTube so they can watch it. Um, but I would like to thank everybody again for being here. We are going to learn a little bit more about the service module. So, some of you who are on our meeting today have this feature enabled. Others, are saying, hey, maybe I want to try the service module, see what it's all about. And some of you on here might just be saying, you have a service module. What? I had no idea. I saw the invite and I'm intrigued. So we're going to have all different avenues on today, and I've got a lot to cover about the service module. But before I jump into it, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Jennifer Doyle. I am a co-founder and the VP of Customer Success and Support here at InspectPoint, and I will be taking you on today's journey through the service module. Before we jump into it, though, just some general housekeeping. So everyone is currently muted, which I was at the very beginning as well. But if anybody has any questions, I want you to leave those in that question box. There's a question box on the right-hand side. There's a little questions area. If you have any questions, drop those in that questions area, and I will address any and all of them that I can within the hour time frame that we have. If there's any that I can't get to, I will follow up with you through email, but we will get through all of those questions, or as many as we can, at the end of the presentation. So, like I said, if you have any questions, drop them in that box, and I will make sure that we get through those today. So, I have a lot to cover today. As you can see by this giant list on what I would like to cover today, of course, there are so many things that and little offshoots that I would love to explore, but for time purposes, I want to really focus on these key areas. So, I want to talk about the InspectPoint workflow and where this all sort of fits into that workflow that we talk about. From there, I want to show you the service configurations that you can enable. So, you know, a lot of stuff, some stuff can come pre-filled. You have the ability to make certain configurations that best meet your company and organization's needs. From there, I want to pop into the actual product again and go through the workflow that I mentioned in the very beginning. I'm going to convert a proposal into a work order. From there, I'm going to dispatch that work order to the iPad. And then I'm going to go over how to perform and send that work order back to the backend from the iPad. So once that work order is dispatched out, how does the technician then perform it, send it back to the office? And then from there, how does the office review and close out that work order in the back end of InspectPoint? So we'll just jump into this InspectPoint workflow. So oftentimes when you're on any sort of consultation with any of the account managers here at InspectPoint, we like to direct you towards this workflow. This is the workflow that we tend to recommend. Now, you may have some of these modules enabled, you may have all of these modules enabled, but we can always come up with a process to help you start from the very beginning and get to the end, whether you have, two of these enabled or all four of them enabled. The part that I'm going to focus on today, though, is that proposal to service. Now, not to, just say I'm just going to focus on that. The proposal that I've created came from an inspection. So I'm starting, and I've already kind of created, the inspection came back, there was deficiencies on it, and I created a proposal linked to an inspection. I'll start, though, for time purposes from this proposal area, convert it to that service ticket or that work order, and then show you quickly how to convert that to an invoice if that's a module or a module you have enabled inside of InspectPoint. So I'm just going to hop into the product. So just give me 1 second where I jump out, and then I'll jump into InspectPoint here. Let me just make this a little bit bigger for everybody so we can sort of see what's going on a little bit better. All right, so I want to start with the settings and the configurations. So just like the inspections portion of Inspect Point, we give you the ability, right, to create, um, you know, edit your questions, give you the ability to create your settings. If you're using our fire alarms system, you can add new device types for fire extinguishers. You have the ability to edit and configure the system to what you need. We do the very same thing with proposals. So you have the ability to create those proposed corrections, those proposal settings, right? Those summaries, those um, terms and conditions, all those things that you can create for proposals. We do the same exact thing for service. So if you have the service feature enabled, up in the upper right hand corner in your settings area, you will see your service settings area. Here, you have the ability to add as much information as you want or as little information as you want. It really, really depends on how you want to build this out. You have the ability to add materials, and you can import those materials via this materials area here, and you can import the materials. You can also export the materials if you need to make any edits, and then re-import them so you don't have to do them one at a time, especially if there's, you know, a 10% markup for that year. You can export out your materials, make the adjustment to the price, and then re-import those materials. Once you have the service feature or the service module enabled, you have the ability to add materials to a proposal. So on top of proposed corrections, you also have the ability to, like I said, add materials to a proposal. And in the field, your technicians would be adding materials needed and materials used out in the field. And I'll show you how that works as well. Going back into the service settings, I won't go through all of these, but you have the ability to create default work order follow-ups. There we go. These are helpful, especially if the technicians in the field are running into the same reasons why a follow-up is needed. If you would like to normalize the way that those notes come back to the office and also help the technicians out by cutting down on time needed for them to add a note, you can create those default follow-ups just like you would create a default note on an inspection. So you can always sort of come in here, click edit, and add as many default follow-ups as you would like. In the field, if a follow-up is needed, the technician can either freeform type that follow-up or they can select from one of these default follow-ups that you've created in the back end. Lastly, in this settings area is time entry rates. I want to point this out because the time entry rates are 100% set by you. I've come in here and set some up just, in my test environment, but this area would become, or when you enable this, this would be blank. You have the ability to come in here and set these time entry rates. Time entry rates by default are not seen by the technician in the field. So if you are worried about that configuration by default, that is not seen by the techs in the field. Another thing to keep in mind too, just going back up to the service settings area and talking about pricing being seen versus not seen, is if pricing is something that you would like to limit from being seen on the iPad, you would just let us know that when you set up the service module. We can make it so that pricing does not appear on the iPad for materials or time entry and any other area where pricing may exist. So we can just limit all pricing from being seen. And then we also have some customers that when they generate the work order do not want pricing to appear on that as well. They just want the pricing to appear on the invoice. That's a configuration setting that we have to take care of for you. It's not something that happens in the settings area, but it is an option. So you can basically prevent pricing from generating on the generated work order as well as the work order that appears on the iPad for the technician. You just have to let the Inspect Point team know. And like I said, we can configure that for you. Now, like I said, there's a lot more settings up here. You can set statuses and types so you can keep track of your different work orders, your different service calls, your payment terms, cost codes, etc. But for time purposes, I won't go through every single one of them, just those big three. that are most used by our customers. Now, kind of going along with that proposal to work order to invoice flow. Like I mentioned, I've created a proposal already, and I have created that proposal from an inspection. Like I said, I won't go into that, but just so you know, once again, this was created from an inspection. I am going to click onto the proposal that I've already created, right? I've already created, it's already in that accepted status. So my customer has already seen it and approved it. And now I'm ready to go and do the work that I've proposed for it. So I'm going to click onto the ID number for that proposal. I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the screen and I'm going to click convert to work order. Now, just really quickly before I go over and click that, I'm still going to see all of the same information that I normally would for my proposal. In this case, I have added a line item and I've added materials, and I have a summary, scope of work, exclusions, terms, and conditions, and I have attached a photo of my adorable little daughter. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to convert to a work order. And now I'm already into the work order. So it's going to start with the next available work order number. This is a settings area. So if you are using an existing work order system for service tickets, work orders, whatever, you can set where you would like that number to start. So the next number in our sort of sequence is 87. And then I have the ability to enter any and all of this information that I might need. So is a PO number, do I have a PO number? Does it expire? Do I have a contract number? Do I have a reference number? When's the service date? Do I have a billing limit? That information is not required in order to go on to the next step. So if you are looking at this and think, I don't use any of that, do not worry. You do not have to create a whole new process. You can simply leave those fields blank and it will not appear when we generate up the work order. So it's not going to look to your customer like you've missed a bunch of information. I have set up a bunch of work order types in an attempt to just sort of keep my work orders in a nice order. Also, so that at any time I can go and look at reports and say, where are most of my work orders taking place, right? Am I doing a lot of repair work? Am I doing a lot of preventative maintenance? Is it a lot of quoted work? Where are my strong points? So if I need to put more resources into certain areas, I can. In this case, I'm going to select quoted service, and I'm going to go ahead and skip the cost code. This item right here is coming over from the summary. So because I have that on the proposal, it's automatically filling in the service description. Now I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to write a very simple problem description. It's going to just say, this is where we add the problem description. That way you don't have to sit here and watch me type out something very long, but this is where you would add the problem description. The technician on the iPad, which we'll see just very shortly, will see the service and problem description. Now from here, while we're creating this work order, if we know when the scheduled visit is going to take place, we can create the visit right now. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and schedule the visit. I am going to do it for today at 12 p.m. I'm going to assign this to myself so I can see it on the iPad for our webinar purposes. And I am going to say that it is due today as well. So the due date is required. So if you're just unsure, put it out a little ways, but a due date is required when scheduling as well. If I know that I am going to need more than one technician on this service visit, I can go ahead and add an additional technician. So multi-tech was a feature that was basically created when service was created. So what would happen is if I dispatch this out to more than one technician, both technicians would pull up the work order. Each one of them would be able to do what they need to do. And when they send back, it would fill in the respective area on the work order. In this case, though, I'm only going to dispatch out to myself, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now from here, because I created this from an inspection, it is showing the work order association. So the inspection that I created this proposal from was for a wet system. And I, because I linked that inspection to the proposal, the work order is going to show that this is an association with that wet system for the repair. This is not required, so if it's not in conjunction with any inspection, maybe you're just doing a free-form service visit, a work order, you can just create it and completely skip over part 2, so just scroll down to the bottom and go ahead and click next. Now, because I have created the work order from the proposal and I've converted it from the proposal, the items that I had on the proposal that the customer approved that I said would be needed in order to make these repairs automatically appear in the fee summary. So I'm not recreating the wheel, looking on another screen and saying, how many, you know, items did I quote on? Which one was it? And accidentally put the wrong item on there. Also, I'm not running into any sort of situation where the customer may say, that's not what was on the proposal, that's not what I signed. So because, like I said, I'm converting it from that proposal, the materials and the correction that I added on that proposal are appearing here. Now, along those lines, I may have to add additional materials on here. So if that is the case, I can always click new material and add additional materials. I can come in and add, corrections as well. Or I can always come in and add line items. So there may be something after the fact that, we don't have set up as a material, we don't have set up as a correction, but we need the technician to know that they have to perform this, and we also have to associate it with a price as well. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as is and go to the next screen. Now from here, I have the ability to add deficiencies. So your service technician may not be the same technician that went out to do the inspection, so they don't have the whole inspection with all the deficiencies that are open, and they may be going out there to do a repair of a deficiency. You do not, most likely, do not want to dispatch out the entire inspection for them. They just are really, you need them to make the repair and acknowledge that the deficiency has been resolved. In this case, when I was creating the proposal, I linked a deficiency to this proposal. That way, when the proposal was going through the acceptance process or the rejection process, but I always lean optimistic and say the acceptance process. When it was going through the acceptance process, the deficiency and the proposal statuses were matching. So right now, my deficiency is showing as accepted, quote accepted, and I'm adding it to this work order now to be resolved. If there are other open deficiencies on this building, they will be listed down below. This one up here is in the added deficiencies area, meaning I've already linked it. If while the technician is out there, they are able to resolve any additional deficiencies, and I would like them to do so, I can always click onto the plus button and I can add that deficiency to the work order so that the technician can see the deficiency, the notes left by the inspection technician, and then they can resolve the deficiency, add the resolution notes, and document with photos if needed. I'm going to go ahead and just add those two and go ahead and click next. Now from here, these attachments are automatically coming through because they're attached to previous reports. I might not want to send all of these, so I'm just going to delete and just send one of those reports. By clicking delete, I am not deleting the inspection report. I'm just removing it from this work order so it doesn't send out. If I, for any reason, need to send a different report out to the customer, or not to the customer, sorry, to the service technician, I can go ahead and click add, and it will send that report to the service tech. Like I mentioned, that technician may be different than the one doing the inspection. They don't have the report, but they need to reference the report. So we're dispatching them out the generated PDF so they can reference the report should they need it for the deficiency resolution. I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the screen and I'm going to click create now. So now at this point in time, I have created the work order. Now, because I created this from the proposal, I'm going to stay on this proposal detail screen. It's going to kick me right back to there. I just want to show you something really quick before we go on to the iPad. I had created this work order here, proposal number 118, And because I converted it to a work order, I now see that this proposal has an associated work order. If I want to know what that work order is, or if there are multiple work orders associated with this, I can just click onto that work order's number. A pop-up will appear. I can go ahead and click onto that ID number, and it's going to take me to that created work order that I've created. Now give me just 1 second while I pull up my iPad and make this just a little bit bigger as well. Right. And so I am now just going to switch to my iPad. I apologize if it's a little small. For some reason, I can't seem to get that to go any bigger, but I just dispatched out a service visit for me. So I'm going to come to the iPad. I'm going to pull to refresh, and I'm going to see that scheduled service visit for me on my iPad. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tap onto the iPad. I'm going to see, just like I do with the inspections, some information over on the right-hand side before I start this service visit. To get the 3 columns out of the way so I can see a little bit more, I'm just going to tap that icon in the upper left that has the sort of arrows pointing out, and it's going to extend the screen for me. So now I'm going to see some of that building information, right? I'm going to see the address, I'm going to see the city, and I'm going to see some of the visit information that was created in the back end. So like I said, we did not, in this case, add like a purchase order number or a contract number or work order reference number. But if we had added that and the technician needs that in order to give that information to anybody on site, they would be able to provide that information. It would be right here on the screen. They'll also see the problem description, the service visit, the materials that the office has said that are needed, the initial service items that are needed, which is that correction that we added. If we had line items or anything like that, those would appear in the additional service items area. We would see our building contacts, and then we would see those inspection reports that we we've associated with this work order as well. To start this work order, what we're going to do is just tap in the upper right-hand corner, service. So it's going to kind of follow the same as the inspection side. Instead of clicking inspect to inspect, you're going to click service to start the service visit. Now from here, you are going to see problem description, service visit. They can be edited in the field. So if additional information might be needed to sort of build out that, real picture of what the problem is. Maybe when this was created in the office, they had very limited information. The technician gets out there. The technician is like, whew, I could add a lot more information to this description right now. What was explained to the office is only a quarter of what I'm actually looking at right now. So additional information can be added, and they can go ahead and click save. Just like on the inspection side, anything added in the field will add to that work order. So you don't have to worry about certain things not making their way back or anything like that. You also have that support documentation, right? So the technician does have the accepted proposal, access to the accepted proposal on site. So they'll see that. So should they encounter anybody, and they said, was this proposed or whatever, they can pull up the proposal. They do just need to be connected to the internet in order to do that. But they can pull up the proposal and say, this is what was quoted for this work, especially if they're going out for that quoted work like I created. And then I will see the 2 inspection reports as well. So I can come on, click those. It's going to just pull up that report, and I can reference the inspection report right then and there. In addition, I'm going to see those deficiencies that I can work on as well. So just like on the inspection side, you would click details to kind of dive in and go with, go further with those deficiencies. Now you'll notice though that the quote accepted and the other one is new. The quote accepted is the one that obviously went through the acceptance proposal from the inspection to the proposal going out to the the proposal being accepted. Out in the field, the technicians can resolve the deficiencies by tapping details. If your technicians are also used to resolving deficiencies, it'll work the same exact way as it does on the inspection side. So they'll click they'll click details. They'll see when it was open. They can go ahead and apply a status to it if it's needed. Then they'll come down and they'll just tap the toggle is resolved. So it'll highlight blue. That indicates that when the deficiency comes back to the office, it will be marked resolved in the back end. They'll want to go ahead and change that status. And then they'll go ahead and add any notes, resolved in the field. And then they can add any notes that they want. And then they'll just go ahead and they'll click save. And it's going to go ahead and update the deficiency status right there on there. So once again, they would click onto that details area, mark it resolved, set the resolution status, and then add any notes. So just test note, ... and click save. So now when this work order goes back to the office, it'll indicate that the following 2 deficiencies were resolved, and then it's also going to mark them resolved in the back end as well. We'll also see those service items that were added, aka the line items or the proposed corrections, as well as the materials that we indicated that were needed on site. So if the technician has used those, they can see them, and then they also have the ability to add additional materials if needed. So say they were out in the field, they said, okay, yes, we actually did use those, but we also needed to use X, Y, and Z while we were in the field as well. They have the ability to add additional materials by clicking the plus button, and then it will work a lot like if they're creating a proposal in the field. They'll just tap next to it to add that blue check mark to indicate that they've used that, and if they had to change the quantity, they can do that as well. One thing to note is I only have just, once again for testing purposes, and also not to overwhelm on this webinar, 3 materials in here. I know that that is a completely unrealistic material list. Many of you have hundreds, if not thousands of materials that you are uploading into your instance. So your list will not look as easy to read as mine. There is a search option up at the top. So if you're looking for something very specific, you can type that into the search box. And then when you're creating your materials, you have the ability to break your materials into types, which I do recommend that you do if you have a lot of materials that you're going to be importing. So what you would want to do is just come in, filter on your type and then search. That'll help adding materials in the field a whole lot easier. Once you're done, you'll just tap done and it's going to go ahead and add that material used. At the same time, I have the ability to come in and say, hey, this was not a material. This was a proposed correction. I want to indicate that I actually used this on site. So I'll tap onto that item. I'll go ahead and I'll tap that toggle and I'll indicate that I did that on site. At the same time, I have pricing enabled on the iPad, and that's why I see pricing. If you have that disabled, the technician would not see that pricing option there. We'll go ahead and we'll click save. Because we've used it, if we went out into the field and we did not use it, we have the ability to remove that correction from this work order because we did not actually end up using it. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And then I now have the option to also add some details about the work that I did perform. So to do that, I'll tap that plus button. You're sort of seeing a trend as you kind of work your way down. The plus button kind of pops up what you need to add. Here you're just going to type in, or the service tech is going to add in what is the work that they did on site. This will generate on to that work order once it's sent back so your customer knows the work that was performed. So I'm just going to say work performed is added here. We'll go ahead and click save. And then last but not least, time entry. So your technician has the ability to add a time entry rate or rates. So say they are on site for a long time, they have the ability to just do standard. They set the start time for when they arrived. They set that time for when they left, and they click save. Say they're there for a long time, they have a standard rate, but that bumps them into overtime. I unfortunately only have a double overtime, so I'm going to just do a double overtime and say that that was just for, an hour. And I'll go ahead and click save. Once again, you're not going to see if you have that, it's not showing the actual rate that's being charged. Before the tech submits back, they have the ability to take any photos as well. So some customers are requiring technicians to, after they make the repairs, they have to take a photo of whatever it is that they did out on site. So if that is something you want the techs to do, or if you're a tech on here and you're like, hey, I want to take a photo, in the upper right hand corner you'll see that camera icon. If you tap onto that camera icon, once again, if it's the first time you're doing it, you will need to grant us access to your camera as well as your photos. It'll prompt you to do that. But what you'll do is you'll click the plus button. You either have the option to take a photo or pick a photo. I'm going to take a photo, and I'm going to go ahead and take the photo and use the photo. I also have the ability to add a caption now, because once again, photos tell a lot, but it might not tell the whole story. So I'm just going to say poster in the office. And I'll go ahead and I'll click done. Just note, if this is an internal only photo, you just need it internally. Just tap the toggle. That's all the tech has to do. It will send the photo back, but not generate it on the work order. We'll go ahead and click close. And now we are ready to review and complete. We'll tap review and complete. It shows the work performed here. It'll show, once again, pricing enabled. If it's disabled, that would not appear. The description of the items that were used, as well as the time entry rate. And we now have the ability to collect signatures if needed. Not everyone requires signatures. And then you also have the ability now to complete the visit. So we're going to complete the visit. It's going to pop up and say, is follow-up required? If it's no, it defaults to no follow-up. If follow-up is required, it was one of those settings I showed in the very beginning, but selecting the reason why you need to follow up, if you have those defaults on, you'll select yes, select the reason, and then it'll just appear in there. I'm going to go ahead and complete the visit. It's going to ask you, are you sure you want to complete the visit? And then you'll click yes. We still need to send it back to the office, so we're going to click the close button in the upper right-hand corner, left-hand corner, close again, and then we're going to click the big blue button that says send to office and mark complete. Now, of course, it's going to go back there. I'm in a test environment here, so I got that, but we'll just go send to office and mark complete. Now, before I move off of the iPad, one feature that I did just want to show that is an option for various companies, not everyone enables this, but it is an option, is the ability for the technicians to create work orders in the field. At the same time, the ability for technicians to create a building in the field. So say you have technicians that are on call, they don't have back-end access, they get an emergency call for a building that does not exist inside your instance. If you enable the function, they have the ability to create the building, create the work order, and go out and do the service visit without having to loop anybody in on the back end and without needing back-end access. So if that's the case, it would work just like the creating the building in the field for the inspection side, but you would go ahead, click that plus button, do the service visit, search for the building. The building does not exist. They have the ability to click that plus button, add the building, and then from there, they can create the work order in the field. So I won't create a new building, but I'll just show you quickly how you can just create that work order. So from the field or from the iPad, the tech just adds the building, selects the type, adds the problem and the service description, and then starts it. They add the materials in the field. They add all the details out there in the field as well. So it is an option I did want to show. Not everyone enables it, but especially a lot of our customers who have technicians out, on those weekend service visits, they don't have them with back-end access. This is a really great way for them to be able to get those emergency visits for new customers essentially. I'm going to switch back over to the back end real quick, and we're just going to finish this work order up. So in the back end, I'm just going to refresh it. I see that that service visit came back. It is complete. I will see the items that came back, and I can now go ahead and I can edit the work order if I want, or I can update the work order status. In order for me to be able to generate the work order, though, I do have to just close out the work order. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do closed, and I'm going to click update because I'm sure I want to close this. And I'm going to update, and then I'm going to download the report. So when I download the report, I'm going to see the information that I filled in. Now, I have it enabled on my work orders, and this is sort of the configuration that you can get too. I have pricing enabled on the iPad, but I have pricing disabled on the service report. So if you were just kind of wondering what that might look like, this is what it would sort of look like. Your photos would appear down here. The photos will be a little bit larger, and also the note would appear as well. But you'll have your service report, the description service, and the items, materials, all of that would come back. I can then go to that work order, and I'd see the work order here. I'd see it's the quoted service. If I had more than one visit, I would see that listed here as well. So I think I have one here where I have 2 visits, and the status of each visit is visible. So if I did dispatch this one work order out to multiple technicians, it would indicate that my portion is complete, but the other technician is still in progress on their part. If, for example, I did have follow-up, like I did indicate that there's follow-up here, I can keep this in an open status, change it back to open, and if I needed to add another visit to address the follow-up, all I'd have to do is come to that work order, add a new service visit, schedule out the date and time, and maybe select a different technician to do that. So I'm just going to schedule that out maybe for this day at 11:05, and we'll go ahead and click save. So now Caitlin would see that on her iPad. Should she pull to refresh, she'll see that work order, see the information, and then be able to do the follow-up and all of that. When Caitlin's portion came back, we could then close that work order out and download the report as well. So kind of a quick overview of the whole process, sort of starting from not going into the details of converting the proposal from the inspection and creating the proposal, but that whole process of really looking at that workflow of how do we take a accepted proposal, take the work that was accepted by or proposed work from our organization to our customer, take that proposed work, convert that into a work order, and then perform the work, add additional work, and then take care of everything we need on our end. One part that I did not cover, though, very quickly, I'll just jump back in, is converting this now to an invoice. That is an option that you have if you are using that. So I'm just going to update this status really quick, move it to closed, click update. You have the ability to create an invoice. So if that is a module you have turned on, you can click create new invoice, and it'll take the items from your work order and add those to the proposal for you, or sorry, invoice for you. So you can convert that work order to an invoice. And this is where our customers will show, of course, the pricing. So a lot of our customers that disable the pricing on the work order are saying they just really want the customer to know the work that was performed. It's really the invoice where they need to know the pricing. So they can disable it, but still see the pricing when they go do the invoice. So I see some questions have popped up. So I'm just going to kind of pop over into the question area here and start answering some of the questions here. Let me see, a couple people said that the audio was not working. So I hope that that was not the case. Um, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that that was not the case. um, If you add deficiencies to a work order, does it have to be for the same asset, or can we dispatch deficiencies for a fire extinguisher even though the work is for the riser work? That's a great question. That's really up to you. If your technician can make the repair or do the swap or whatever they're out there to do, you can dispatch out deficiencies that are unrelated to the item or the, description of that work order. So, um, like I said, good question. If your tech can make those repairs, they're out to do the sprinkler, but they can, take care of the fire extinguisher. I would definitely dispatch that out, and they can resolve the deficiency the same exact way that they would for the sprinkler side. Let me see. Where does the inspector see the resolved deficiencies and associated notes at the next inspection? Let me see. The resolved deficiency are starting at the next inspection. So if the office regenerates the report or regenerates a report where the deficiency was noted, the resolved deficiency would appear on that generated report. Um, the technician would also know that the item has been resolved because the little icon indicating that that item was deficient is going to no longer be there. So they may not know, if it's a different technician, that that item was deficient last time it went out, because in between that inspection and the next inspection, it's been repaired. It's been resolved. The deficiency has been marked resolved. As long as the office side is generating that report, the technician can reference a previous report and they can see, oh, it was identified on this time, and they can see that it was resolved and any of the notes that were resolved. So let me see. Another question is, I see that you added materials to your work order. How can we manage our materials in our instance? How is pricing updated the best? Good question. So that would be through, actually, I just hit the questions button. I wanted to get those back up. I meant to go back into my instance here. So give me one sec while I go back over here and I jump out of here. You'd want to, in your materials area, if you need to maintain your materials, if you need to update pricing, the best way that I recommend that you do it is exporting out your materials, making the necessary adjustments, and then re-importing them in. If you delete one, it's going to take care of it. If you're updating the pricing, it's going to take care of it. It's probably the easiest way to go ahead and handle the pricing adjustments. Especially like I said, you guys are not going to have a list of 3 materials in your instance. I like to keep it a little simple just for testing and demoing purposes here, but your materials lists are going to be much, much, much longer. So unless you want to go through each material, the best way to handle that is to export out those materials, make the necessary adjustments, and then re-import those materials back into the system. Perfect. All right, next question is, so the corrections made by the technician in the field on the work order will update the deficiency status in the back end. Am I understanding that correct? Yes. So if the technician in the field was dispatched out a deficiency along with that work order, and they resolve the deficiency, they mark it resolved, they add the status, then when they send back the work order, it will resolve the deficiency in the back end as well. So just like just like the inspection techs can see all open deficiencies when they're out there doing an inspection, and they have the ability to resolve the deficiency, the service technician has the same exact ability, but they're only seeing the deficiencies you want them to see. But that is correct. When they send back the work order, if they've marked it resolved, it will update it in the back end for you. When there are multiple techs added to one work order, is it possible to view the other tech's work performed? That's a really great question. Right now, no, because of that offline capability. So because we give technicians the ability to work offline, so say you have one tech in the penthouse, great Wi-Fi, right? Killer in internet service. They're zooming along. And then you've got another technician in the deep, darkest part of a basement and they lose all Wi-Fi, all internet connection. That technician in the deep, dark basement is still able to do all of their work, record everything, and then when they connect back, they can go back. So if they're working on it at the same time right now, they cannot see the other technicians. Great idea, and we're working towards a little bit more of that. But because of that ability, it sort of prevents the techs from seeing everything in real time. Is there a way for our suppliers to give us a CSV for pricing to import into Inspect Point? 100%. So if you get pricing from, one of your suppliers and you're like, oof, I need this inside Inspect Point, you can totally take our import template, add the information in there, drop it in and import the information. So that import export function is real nice function to have inside here. It gives you the ability, instead of hand typing in every single material that you may need, it's going to give you the ability to take that, drop it in, review it, make sure everything is good, and then import it in, and then you have your supplier's pricing inside of Inspect Point, and then you can start adding that supplier's information to any proposal because you have service turned on. So you can start actually using your supplier's information and their pricing. And then you can start using that materials on your service visits and your work orders as well. So good questions, guys. I'm going to leave it opened. We've got about 12 minutes or so, if my clock is correct. Do we have any other questions that anybody can think of? Leave this up for just a second. I am also just going to throw my contact information back up on the screen here. So oftentimes, I know how this is. I sit on presentations myself. I'm sitting on them. Oop, I get another question. And then all of a sudden, boom, the presentation ends and I have like 5 questions. So if you're thinking of any, you have to drop off, you need anything, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. If you want this feature enabled, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. All right, perfect. Down the line for organizing materials. So the question was, are there any planned improvements coming down the line for organizing materials? I know the types we're hoping. We're always looking for feedback. So if there is any feedback that you might have on ways that we could improve the organization of the materials list, like I keep saying, you guys have hundreds, if not thousands, of materials in there. If you're finding that types is not the best way to organize it, if you have suggestions, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to take those suggestions for improving how you are using the materials, seeing it. Um, you know, um, I'll work with you on that. And then also, we do have Drew Slocum on the call as well, and he just mentioned that we are starting to work with different suppliers and manufacturers as well. So we'll throw that out there as well. So hopefully we'll have a lot of that pricing and those materials and all of that for you once we start working with a lot of those suppliers and manufacturers. We'll be able to sort of have that information sort of already available to us. So little winky face smiley, a little teaser for everybody. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, about the organizing and improvements. If you are a current user of our service module and you have any feedback that you think could help improve it, just like we do on the inspection side, we are always listening to our customers. Service is built right into the platform. It's part of a workflow that we really try to push everybody towards because it makes sense. It helps keeps everything organized. It keeps things connected. Everything is logically grouped together. So if there's anything we can do to improve any of the modules that you might be using, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Like I mentioned, if you have additional questions, You can't think of them right now. Maybe you're a little shy. You don't want to ask them. Totally okay. Also, email me. And then also, if you want this feature enabled, um, maybe you really don't know. I don't know. Maybe I want this enabled, but I don't know about the cost. Email me about the cost and also email me because I can also give you a trial of this as well. So if you want to see if this is really going to work for you before you enable this for all of your technicians, reach out to me and we can discuss a trial period for you to make sure that this truly fits your workflow and what you need from the product, and the workflow works for you before you go ahead and add this onto your subscription of Inspect Point. So let me see. I'll throw it out there one last time. Any other questions that anybody has? All right. Well, I'm going to call it then at this point. If any other questions, like I said, come up, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you again for attending today. If you do know anybody that was registered for last week and was unable to make it this week, please let them know that they will get a recording of this. And once again, thank you for being so flexible. Thank you for being here today. And if any questions come up, please do not hesitate to contact me. Have a great day, everybody.